Excellent. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to manage different tabs to see everybody. Let me just. Right. So, I've got any apologies for this?
There are no apologies for absence. There are no apologies for absence. No apologies.
Okay, great. Any declarations of interest?
Just possibly from me, when it gets to the item 7, work of the pensions committee, there is mention in that report about the tenders for various contracts. So depending how the discussion goes at that point, I may need to excuse myself.
Okay, thanks, Catherine. I'm a deferred scheme member, but everybody knows about that, but just worth reminding people. Minutes of the previous meeting. Any points of accuracy?
I did note a few things. Do you want me to go through them now? I have sent an email through to Rachel that she can share with governance services.
So yeah, we just because it's difficult to clarify. None are major. Difficult to clarify over a video call. We can run through them, or I can email them directly. Most are sort of most are minor changes to wording and spelling.
Okay, Catherine, do you want to run through them then? I think given that we need to agree these minutes or check them back, we do need to understand what they are.
Yeah, of
Catherine,
course.
Do you want to run through them?
Yeah. So I think the link to the previous meeting is wrong. I think it's actually picking up the one from October 2020, not October 2021.
Okay, didn't look at it. Well spotted.
Paragraph 4.2, I would like to be amended slightly just to reflect what I said. So I'd prefer it to read, Catherine Pearce confirmed that many of the structures referred to were already embedded in many local government funds, but that there were concerns that not all funds are meeting best practice governance requirements. I think that better reflects what I actually said in the meeting.
Seems a bit more coherent than has noticed a fantastic spelling mistake in the copy I've got of it as well.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Next point.
Paragraph 4.3, it mentions 5 sections and there's actually 7 listed. Maintenance of IT systems and cyber controls are actually part of the administration section. They're not separate sections.
Okay.
Paragraph 5.1. I think the very last date should read 2021-22, not 2020-21.
Yep, I agree.
The title of item 7 should be major projects update.
Great typo, yes. I'd read through it as major as well.
And paragraph 7.3, the date should be 2014 to 2017, not 1017.
Yeah.
And the close of the meeting should be 11:30, not 10:30.
I'm fast, but not that fast at getting through meetings, Catherine? Yes, those all seem fair enough. Everybody okay with those amendments? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any matters arising that are not elsewhere on the agenda? I don't think there were.
So in the only one I can think of is actually it appears partially since we published the update paper on Russia. We have updated our stance slightly, so we will need to run through that when we reach that particular paper. When we published, to be honest, we didn't actually have all the information, so we do now.
Okay, we'll do that in item 6, a conflict in Ukraine, yeah? Rachel, is that good?
Yes, sorry, I've muted myself.
Okay, great. So risk policy and risk register. We would typically have some training at the beginning where I notice I can't see it. specifically on the agenda? Where are we going to do it?
So it's been left to the exempt section as it's cyber security. I admit I would normally put a specific training paper on the beginning, but it is in the exempt, okay. So that's why it's not at the start.
Okay, risk policy and register. Is that you told to start, or Jackie?
I'm happy to. So the risk policy and register. The risk policy is it's a standard pension fund document, and it comes for update once every 3 years. So it was last updated December 2018, and it's just come back to the pensions committee for updating. So essentially, it just sets a framework for risk management of the pension fund. Key changes we have listed are indicated on the document in yellow. We have tried track changes in the past, but it actually makes it very, very difficult to read. So highlighting in yellow is generally just a little bit clearer. So key changes are partly to account for SIPF's investment pooling guidance, and there's just a little bit further detail added in terms of the fund's risk management process. And then what we've also done is because we've had a small internal restructure, we have had to make a few changes to job titles and responsibilities. The other part is sort of, I know with this risk register, I think we've had sort of ongoing challenges really just in terms of presentation, because obviously pension fund risks are something that both yourselves and the committee do want to touch on each meeting. Obviously, the full risk register is quite detailed. We have had comments in the past that it is quite difficult to read, and I do appreciate that. So I think we've tried a few different changes over the last few years, and so we are looking to try and shift to sort of more of a sort of dashboard presentation each quarter, and then to bring the full risk register perhaps annually. So those are the updates. To the risk policy, and then along with that, we've presented the fund's most recent risk register. So there's four risks currently scoring as red.
Hang on, let's take the policy bit first, Rachel, then we'll look at the actual risks, if that's okay. So I'll take any comments, questions, things people want to say on the policy part of the risk. Any comments? Michael?
No comments on policy.
Hugo?
I'm quite happy with it.
Okay. Yeah, no, it seemed to make sense. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, and I like the colouring in rather than the strikeout. I did find it easier to read once you got over the sunburst of colour. That was good. Great. Okay. I mean,
we can always choose a colour that's not yellow next time.
No, that's fine. It's absolutely fine. Do you want to talk about the specific risks then, where we want?
Yeah, so I'll touch on the high risk elements. So in terms of how it's presented, so it's the risk register set out across three key sections. So there's administration and communications, funding and investment, and governance. Across those three, we've got four risks rated as red. So we have a governance risk around potential financial data loss or systems downtime due to cybercrime. So obviously, as you'll be aware, the Hackney Council suffered a cyber attack at the tail end of 2020. So I think sort of that's something we are particularly conscious of at the moment, and it is rated red, as although we do now have a fund specific cyber security policy. We recognise there's the actions from that a number of them still do need to be put in place. So we are that risk. We hope to see that come down as we start to put the policy recommendations in place. We then have 3 administration risks. So we have poor membership data, which has been sort of in and out of a red rating over the past few years. So that's been an ongoing risk to the fund. Again, it's one that we hope to see that one come back down to amber over the next few months. What has been quite encouraging is that we have done an initial cut of the valuation data for 2022, and the actuary has come back and has actually been largely happy with data quality, which is a huge step forward from where we've been in 2016 and 2019. So we've been quite happy with progress on that one. And then the other 2 administration risks we have are regulatory changes, such as the exit cap and the impact of the McLeod remedy. So the red rating on these 2 is really around the very, very significant uncertainty associated with these. So the problem with them is that we simply do not know what the impacts are, particularly in terms of McLeod. We recognise it's likely to be just a reasonably significant exercise in terms of time and cost. We can't make any predictions as to how many members will be affected. And so until we can start to make those judgments, we'd regard it as very highly uncertain. So we've kept it as a red risk for the time being.
Okay. And there's no red risk in funding investment.
So funding.
Okay. Yeah, fine. There are no reds in there. That's
No.
good. Okay. Have people got any comments on not just the ones that are in red, but any of the others that they've want to ask for information or have thoughts on them? Michael?
Thanks, Rachel. On the governance risk, we've got quite a few that aren't at the target risk status and haven't
Yes.
been, it seems, for a number of years. And the expected target date to get back on track is September. How confident are you that you're going to be able to meet that for quite a few metrics on that risks?
Yeah, no, that's fine. So on the governance risks, the key one we would want to address is obviously on the reliance on external systems, and we are now putting a plan in place to have the key aspects of the key recommendations from the cybersecurity policy put in place, and our target date for that one is September, and we do hope to have that one complete. In terms of the other ones above target, sort of some of these obviously we may look to review. September is in there as our target date. I think some of them are, I admit, they are more straightforward to address than others. So it will I think be a question of prioritization. So we'll look to focus first on external systems. Knowledge and skills is something that we've identified that we can hopefully make quite a bit of progress on over the next few months. Recruitment and retention. We do have changes planned prior to September. So we would hope to be able to bring that risk down as well. And then again on data protection, some of those changes will be wrapped into the reliance on external systems changes. So a number of these where we've targeted September, we do have changes planned to take place prior to then, and so obviously we will re-review at that point. I don't want to definitively say that yes, we will bring all of these risks down to target by September, but certainly we do have changes planned to take place.
Okay, thank you.
On governance risks, Rachel, I'm surprised one of them is at amber, the conflict of interest one. It always strikes me that, you know, local government is very aware of conflicts of interest, and I wondered why. You know, I'm kind of curious why you think it's at amber.
Do you want me to pick that one up, Rachel?
Yes, of course, that's fine.
So Aon was involved with producing or helping update the risk register, and largely things like the knowledge and skills and conflict of interest were amber simply because there have been a reasonable number of new committee members recently. So it's more just about reflecting that change, and obviously as the committee members bed in and are less new, those things will be less of an issue, and we'll hopefully go back down to the target.
Because I think a large part of that, as Catherine says, is because committee membership will renew. On the knowledge and skills front, there's definitely a programme of training that needs to take place, and then naturally that raises some of the associated risks around it as well. So I think by September we will be able to look again at those. And hope, ideally, what we'd like to be able to say is, yes, we have new committee members. They have all attended induction training, and they have all filled in a conflicts of interest form, and then we can look to take that back down again.
Okay, I mean, yeah, to be cautious is a good idea, but given that materially the committee members are councillors, they've already got registers of interest. So I think you mean a little bit. I agree about knowledge and skills. Yeah, they need to kind of get it. But you would hope. Well, I mean, I'm fearful of many other things if your pension fund members don't understand conflict of interest. But yeah, I'd rather we were cautious than going over the top. But that seems worrying if they really don't understand conflict of interest. On funding investment risk, anything anyone wants to say? Administration and communication risks. Any points there? I mean, I'll whine a bit about the poor membership data still being read. It feels like, how long have we been doing this, for crying out loud? It's not just the last few years. We seem to have had concerns about poor membership data forever. I'll stop whining and take Jackie. Jackie.
Yes, I was just going to say, I do think when you look at this whole risk register, I do think it's very much a cautious register, and if you look at that admin one as well, I think that it's probably on the cusp of it being amber. I think, Rachel, because we have made a lot of progress, particularly with the interface work that's gone on. So that is one we really should expect to see come down for September.
Yeah,
and
my taking a year off has vastly improved the speed of work on the interface. So we are now at a point where this, I think it is actually probably going live pretty much as we speak. As I think it's this month's data that is due to be sent in, that is due to run in live. So we are, I know we have said that it is improving. I know that we have said that it is improving for a number of years, but we have really this time made some very significant changes. We've got an interface that is actually ready to go live if it hasn't done so already. Sorry, Jackie.
Yeah, go ahead, Jackie.
I just wonder, Rachel, if it's worth updating as well, because at a committee last week that you updated around the performance of Equinity as well. In the last, appreciate Equinity came to this board at the end of last year, and you've noted quite a few improvements since.
Yeah, so Equinity have made some quite material improvements in terms of meeting KPIs. what we have seen with Equinity is they have had quite a long period of internal change. They've had some quite significant staff turnover, which obviously does create a certain amount of uncertainty. But I think we have so far. I think we have been quite happy with the changes that they've made. We have, I think, got a lot more confidence in the new relationship manager, and certainly Lucy has noted improvements in sort of business as usual performance for the administration team. So there have been improvements there. We do, as you can tell by the risk rating, we do still have some concerns, but we do recognise that it is an area that has improved.
Okay. All right, well, we'll see the register next time then, unless anyone's got any final points on risk. No. Okay. Pensions administration.
So this is the updated pensions administration strategy. So essentially, this has recently been for consultation with employers, and it essentially sets out how the funds administration team relates and interacts with our employers. So it sets out how we'll communicate with scheme employers, what the responsibilities of scheme employers are, and our responsibilities towards them. So we've circulated the draft strategy to employers very early on this year. We have had no comments back from employers on it. So it has been distributed to them. They have had the opportunity to comment, but nobody. Sorry.
Not even Hackney.
No, so it is distributed to Hackney's payroll department, which essentially covers the employer relationship, and they have not commented on it. What I would say is we have not made huge changes to it from previous years. So that possibly is reflected in the fact that we've not had much commentary. So it is largely it's clarifications. We've tried to sort of clarify and tighten up some of the wording around schools, as what we've had in the past are a number of issues just around the relationship between schools and their payroll providers, as obviously the payroll providers' contracts are always with the schools rather than us. So we will often struggle to deal directly with them. So there is a role there for the schools, and sometimes that's not always been picked up. So we've tried to tighten up the wording a little bit there to really to help schools and to give them an indication of what they need to be doing in terms of essentially monitoring their payroll providers. We've also made a couple of amendments to reflect employer self-service. Obviously, as this does come in, we do need all employers to make use of it. So it's clarifying that there will be charges if this isn't used. And then we've got some amendments with regards to McLeod and McLeod data, an update to the section about the pensions regulator's role. So the pensions regulator has previously had a public sector specific code of practice, and this is now being replaced by a single modular code. So it's just a change of reference there. And then a final change to how we measure performance objectives. So there's not a great deal there in terms of change. And as I said, we've not heard a great deal from employers. So that has now been passed by the pensions committee. So it's now the fund's formal administration strategy.
Okay. Any comments, questions? I have some thoughts, but I'll offer you. Hugo, have you got anything you want to say on this item?
Nothing from me, thanks.
Michael?
The charges laid out on pages 76 and 77 for data, which is always, Sam says, a hot topic for this board.
It is.
Do you think these level of charges actually engender the behaviour we're looking for, is timely, accurate data in the correct format? Because you could take the view that they're not very high and they're not really driving the right behaviours that we need and want from our.
Yeah, the level of charge to set is quite a difficult one, and obviously we do have what we do also have is the problem of very different sizes of employer. So we do have very small employers within the fund to whom these charges are likely to be material. What we have, sorry, Catherine.
Oh no, it's fine. I was going to wait for you to finish.
Okay. So what we have tried to do with the charges is to recognise where employers are repeatedly not providing information. So it is trying to balance. We actually don't want to over penalise employers for a first offence, but what we are trying to recognise is repeated problems, because those are the employers that we are likely to be concerned about. For a first offence, it is a matter of recognising that there's a cost to the administration team.
Yeah.
Whereas strictly speaking, what we're doing is, I suppose, is covering our costs rather than issuing a penalty charge. So it's trying to drive behaviour whilst recognising that we cannot impose punitive charges, I suppose. Catherine might be able to give a better description than me.
No, it's fine. I was actually just going to clarify that point, that the regulations are clear that it is just about recovering additional costs that the fund incurs rather than it being a fine as such.
Yeah, I certainly wasn't expecting us to kind of like profit or the fund to profit.
No.
They are so low. When you look at the reporting requirements, if benefit statements are late, having to engage with the regulator and internal resources, £100, £65, I just would be surprised if they even covered costs in some cases. And Rachel, you mentioned that some of the larger employers, so should the fees be based on size of membership, because it takes longer?
What we have done to recognise that there is a significant disparity here is we have incurred very significant costs as a result of some of the difficulties we've had with Hackney Council. Where that's been the case, we have actually gone outside of the charging regime described here and charged. We have charged where we have clear and invoiced costs from third-party providers that are traceable directly to failures of information provision by the council. We have charged those to the appropriate service area.
Okay, thank you.
That's good to know. I mean, I wanted to also understand, given that none of the employers appear to comment, I wanted to just check that you've got processes in hand for post April 1st, which will enable you to have early warning where people are not doing things, rather than just discover sometime later that things haven't happened. And I also wondered if there was I understand what's been said about you need to just proportionately recover costs that you've incurred, but I also think that the scale of the employer what they pay should have some relationship to because they could the larger they are, the more they could reasonably have larger scale administration teams running their payrolls and should be on top of these sort of things. So what you know, are you set up to watch that people do in a straight way so that you can reach out to them and encourage them to be doing it? I think it's probably an answer then. We can't have a sliding scale of charges depending on the scale of the employer.
Yeah, and so that comes back to the question of not imposing punitive costs, because we essentially cannot profit. And so our costs, you know, if a large employer committing a minor, say a large employer not sending contributions on time, essentially costs us the same as a small employer doing it. The frustrating part of that is obviously it's likely to prove a much more significant deterrent to the small employer than it is to the large employer, which is so obviously what we've done to try and address this is the issue over where we have incurred recognisable. I appreciate it is a difficult balance to strike, because we cannot treat employers differently, even though it is clear that the costs are a much better deterrent to small than large employers.
Okay. And have you got staff watching to see so that you get early warning when people are?
Yeah. So what we have is on our accounting team, we have somebody who monitors payments flags up where, so they get information back from Equinity, and flags up where we have late payments. Within our administration team, I think she's actually attended pensions board a couple of times in the past. So we have a liaison officer called Karen, and it's her role to actually go out, liaise with employers, and essentially try to take a proactive approach. So if there are issues, if there are minor issues, say becoming apparent with a new employer, it's her role to go out, liaise with the employer, try to understand what those are. What she does is she provides an awful lot of sort of employer education. So she goes out, she quite often does school visits, so she goes out to school administration teams, sits with them to help make sure that they understand what their responsibilities are, what they need to do, and essentially tries to deal with issues before they become long-standing. Obviously, what we have had is we do still, we have obviously in the past had significant risk associated with the council itself, as we've had some really well documented problems there.
Okay, look forward to that just kind of working and everyone getting on with it. We'll move on to the next item then, conflict in Ukraine, pension fund impact. And who's going to talk to us about this?
So at the time of publication of this paper, obviously we'd had a number of questions about sort of whether or not the fund had Russian or Ukrainian holdings. We were getting an awful lot of questions about sort of what our approach to Russian investment was going to be. Obviously, since publication, what we have done is an exercise to pick up where we had any direct exposure. So we do have some very very small direct exposure within our equity portfolios. Hugo?
Sorry, apologies. I was just saying my camera.
Rachel? Yeah, Rachel, you finish. Don't try and let people finish.
So we do have. So we do have some small exposures there. What we've done is obviously we've looked. So some guidance has come out from the pensions regulator, and there's some additional guidance available from the LGPS Scheme Advisory Board. Obviously, it is something that it is something that's affected quite a large number of pension funds. We are definitely not an outlier in this respect. Having reviewed what our direct holdings actually are, we've established that that they were small. There's not been a significant financial impact on the fund. Obviously, the value of those stocks has been impacted, but the exposure, as you might expect, was small. The statement that we've now made is obviously we've followed guidance from the pensions regulator Scheme Advisory Board. Considered as a fund what the best approach is, and essentially the conclusion that we've reached is we've also used Law Commission guidance on essentially on disinvestment. So the Law Commission states that disinvestment for financial reasons is always reasonable. It also adds that if investors are considering disinvestment for reasons other than the financial, you have to be really clear that essentially that financial detriment won't be significant, and that the majority of scheme members would share your concern. So the conclusion that we've reached on our Russian exposures is that we will look to disinvest those once we're able to, and that's not a statement that we've made previously. We've never really looked to take a direct disinvestment approach before. The reasoning behind it on this occasion is that sort of the long-term prospects for financial recovery of these is really very uncertain, and crucially there is really and this is where it differs very significantly from other issues we've had in the past, is that there is no real case for engagement here. Quite simply, these companies cannot be engaged with. So we have taken the view that we will work with the London CIV to remove those holdings as soon as it's practically possible to do so, which is likely to take quite some time.
Okay, Jack. Hugo, were you indicating you just changing your setup?
I was changing my setup. I do have a quick question. What do we think the impact of inflation is going to have on the underlying fund? Because that's probably as big a concern as the ongoing conflict in Ukraine.
Yes. So obviously there are.
Rachel, wait a minute. Jackie's got a question as well, and then I'll take you again.
I'll take both then.
I'm not sure whether there's a reason why you're not quoting the figure, Rachel, because I think we mentioned it.
Oh, sorry. No, there wasn't a reason I wasn't quoting it. So the actual figure was around 0.05%. So it was very small. It will have been a little bit. It will have been higher back in January, but the exposure wasn't significant.
Okay. And Hugo's point about inflation being going to knock the scale of the Russian.
Yeah. So the inflation point is, I suppose, obviously, it can and does have an impact. I think the view we would take from an investment perspective is that the fund still has very significant equity holdings, which are probably the best defence against an inflationary environment. So obviously, in aiming to disinvest those Russian stocks, we are not making at this stage any material adjustment to our equity exposure. When it comes, we will be reviewing the fund's investment strategy following the valuation, and the position that we're in as a fund is obviously we're looking now at a change in our cash flows. We've always been sort of quite strongly cash flow positive, and that over the next few years is not going to be the case. So what we are looking to do is look a little bit more towards income generation. But what we don't see at the moment as being feasible is, we are an open fund, so we have new members joining the fund all the time. We have a very long time horizon, and buying sort of protection and liability matching assets at the moment is really, really unbelievably expensive. So what we're not looking to do is shift in a big way into sort of a more protection based strategy. We will look to retain, what we'll do is look to retain exposures to growth and to income, and hopefully taking that position in our investment strategy is hopefully a reasonable defence against inflation.
And I guess as a board, as opposed to the fund, as a board, knowing that the fund will, after the annual evaluation, consider its investment approach, taking into account its funding level and things like the switch of the cash flow position, is what we need to make sure has happened. Yeah. Yeah, because obviously we're interested in the investment strategy, but as a board, it's important that the investment strategy is considered by the fund. I'm sure
that's exactly it. So it's essentially
cool.
what we would probably look to do for maybe next meeting is basically to take a sort of decision making timeline on the investment strategy, for you to see sort of what factors we've considered, and sort of how that's informing the development of the investment strategy.
Excellent. Look forward to that. Thank you very much. And it leads neatly onto the review of the work of the Pensions Committee, which is the final item of the open agenda. Any questions that people have got on what Pension Committee has been doing and have shown us their homework?
I saw that the Pension Committee were updated with GMP reconciliation and the communication to members. I just wondered if we'd received any complaints or IDRPs from those members that have been negatively impacted by GMP RAC.
Oh, so I will have to take that one back. I do get our IDRPs, and the ones that I've seen recently have not been GMP related, but I will double check it.
Okay,
Thank
so
you,
we can see that next time. Or drop us a note out, Rachel, if that's easier, rather than waiting until next time.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. I can do a short written update on that.
Fantastic. Any other points from the committee agendas and work? No. Okay, we'll go into exempt session now. And I believe there's two items. There's a report about the cybersecurity strategy, and I think probably prior to that we're do some training. Is that right, Catherine?
Yes, that's right. My colleague should be joining any minute now. So.
I don't know, Catherine, sort of whether it rather than wait in terms of time frame, do we want to cover a little bit of the paper first, or?
It's up to you. Whatever the committee, whatever the board would prefer to do. If they'd rather have the
Well,
training
then,
first,
and if
and
we
then
get
go into the strategy. And
Jackie, go ahead.
We still seem to be live streaming.
Yeah, could we turn the live stream on?
Please do end it.